Hi guys, this is Janae and welcome back to my channel, and today we are continuing the read along for silent reading. Sorry, my brain just froze for a second there, otherwise known as Modu. And yeah, I am not as excited as I would be if we were at like a lighter part of the story, considering like how rough the previous few chapters were. But I'm still like, even though I'm very apprehensive, I'm still actually excited because I'm sure Priest will make it worth our while. Um, Hi guys. So just also as always, please let me know if the audio is okay. Hopefully it's not giving the same issues as it did yesterday. Hopefully we're not gonna have any of the tech issues that we did yesterday. But like, also I don't want to jinx it. So yay. Okay, great. Um, so I'm gonna give it like just a few minutes in case people still want to catch up with this. But we are gonna try and go a little bit over, or just be sure where however long we go, I really want to try and actually do 4 chapters during this one. So we'll see how that goes. As far as I know, this is where we were. Oh my goodness, this is frustrating. I made sure to um, scroll to the correct part before coming, like before this, and now it's jumped back. Um, I'm trying to think. I think it was either 9 or 11. Let's see here. Okay, here it is. Okay. While we are just waiting, let me also quickly pop out the chat so I don't only realize that I need to pop out the chat after we're already basically ready to go. Um, Also, like, just a heads up, I don't think it's gonna affect the stream in any way, shape, or form, but just in case, um, Juliet has been sleeping most of the day, and she just suddenly had like a burst of energy as a result. So if you hear any crazy sounds from outside this frame, that might be her. I don't know. Okay, let's see. This should be fine. So I'm not quite sure, but there seems to be this weird black area on the screen today, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just from my side, the display, hopefully, but I didn't change anything about my setup, so I if it's there, I don't know why it's suddenly there. But okay, I think we can get started. So let me quickly pull it up and let's go. Also, as always, I do have tea here with me and some water. Always gonna be lenient towards any puppies, so no worries for me. Okay, that is good to hear. Um, okay, let's get. Why did it? It's not just me. Like, it was at the right spot a few seconds ago, and now it's scrolled back. That is so weird. I hope it doesn't keep on doing that throughout the night, because that's gonna be very disorientating. Okay. According to this, chapter 42, Humbert 9. According to this inference, Lang Chao, sporting dark circles about the same size as her eyes, said faintly, either Wu Guangcheng climbed up out of the morgue, or we got the wrong person back then, and over 20 years later, the real killer has resurfaced to offend again. If a person succeeds in committing 6 crimes, with the police unable to catch a shadow and even helpfully finding someone to take the blame for him, an ordinary person would already be self-satisfied enough to go insane. If he's a real psycho, who would he have stopped for so many years? Lowendraw said. If we really got the killer wrong back then, the last 20 years and more are long enough for him to have filled up a mass grave. Oh, that's a terrifying thought. Lang Chao turned her head. Captain Law, what you're saying is appalling. What you're saying is pretty appalling too. Lowendraw rolled the shaft of his pen around in his hand. However it is, I already sent people to stake out Chutong's house to look into the person who left the flash drive. Don't quote me on it, but they're unlikely to turn anything up, said Lang Chao. I just got through asking the parents. Chutong's house is on an old estate, and the property management doesn't do anything 30 days out of the month. It's basically an open door policy over there. Just last month, they had some things stolen. Think about it. Someone takes something from your house and they don't get caught. Forget about someone leaving something. Yeah, true. Taran asked, what about other leads? The flash drive is one of those ordinary cheap kinds. You can find exactly the same thing on hundreds of sites online. It's been wiped very clean. Not half a fingerprint on it. The techs are stepping up their analysis of the contents of the recording, but the suspect's anti-reconnaissance awareness is evident. Lowendraw paused and shook his head. The outlook isn't optimistic. The possibilities of leads was very small, and the possibility that the girl was still alive was also very small. The golden 72-hour had passed. The recording sent to the girls' parents seemed like some kind of a preening summing up. Oh, I'm still here. I'm the victor again. You can't catch me. There's actually another line of thought, Taran said after quietly muttering to himself for a moment. On the night this happened, who would have been passing by? At the time, we investigated the security records of some nearby scenic spots, industrial parks, and major roads. If the person who took the girl had been driving past by coincidence, it would have been very hard for him not to leave any traces. But thus far, we haven't found any traces along the route, so it's possible that someone had been following Chutong all along. So perhaps his aim was another girl on the bus similar to Chutong, and he just happened to run into the hijacking. Having heard this, Lang Chao already grasped his meaning. You're saying that the stalker didn't succeed on his first try? That's also a terrifying thought. On the last day of the summer camp, the students had gone to the outskirts, but before that, their activities had always been in the city, near the school. If this mysterious kidnapper had been tailing one of the students, then it would have been far more difficult for him to hide his tracks in the city. The traffic cameras on the surrounding residents may have noticed him. Lang Chao stood immediately. I'll go arrange it. I've arranged it. Lowendraw waved a hand towards her. Sit down for now. After we finished investigating the scene that day without finding any suspicious individuals, I had people investigate following the tracks of some of the girls in their class. Of the 18 students, 11 were girls all around the same age as Chutong, with 6 of them who resembled her in stature and appearance. Even focusing our attention on those 6, investigating everywhere they went, what people they passed by, it would still involve over 100 people. After conducting a survey of the scene, we only know that this person wears Size 42 shoes. It's too little information. We can't even be sure of the person's age or sex. We have nothing to go on. Unless his appearance is very suspicious, which at present it seems evident that it isn't. Oh, goodness. The stress I'm already feeling, and we are 15 minutes in. Not even. We just started. Um, Listening from beside him, Liu Liang couldn't resist sighing. He acknowledged himself that even if he had personally been in charge, he couldn't have been more thorough. But sometimes opportunity and luck were both indispensable. Back then, the kidnapper called the victim's family directly. Now that he knows we can trace calls, he's changed to an untraceable means of delivery. He's really advancing with the times, Lang Chao sighed. Isn't this what you call good advances a Qi and evil advances a Zhang? In a different tone, Luo Wenzhou said, I remember the victims back then were never found, dead or alive. In the end, why did we think that Wu Guangcheng was Chun was the culprit behind the serial kidnappings? Just because he had the children's bloody clothes with on him? No, we handled cases somewhat irregularly back then, but not that irregularly, said Director Lu. Aside from the cut-apart clothes, the primary reason we determined that Wu Guangcheng was the culprit was the seventh girl. There were signs of sexual assault on her, and after she woke up, she named Wu Guangcheng. What was the child's name now? I think she was surnamed Su. Su Xiaolan, said Taran. She's mentioned in my Shufu's notebook. She was Wu Guangcheng's student. Right, that was it. Having thought for an age, Director Lu truly hadn't been able to come up with it. He had to sigh. Oh, it's been too long. My old brain isn't any good. There's a lot of things I can't recall clearly anymore. You go ahead and request the files be transferred over. Lu Wenjua kicked the inattentive Lang Chao with the tip of his foot, and she reacted, hastily agreeing and running off to start the procedures. Is it bad that I'm kind of suspecting Director Lu? Director General Lu, I suppose is his correct name. I know I have no reason to, but I'm just kind of a little bit suspicious because I don't think we really got, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think we got clarity on who was behind the girl by the end of the 8th episode. Maybe we did. If we did, just say yes, but that's true. um, um, where were we? With the top of his foot, and she reacted, hastily agreeing and running off to start the procedures. With Director Lu's name on the request, the old case's records were transferred over very quickly. 20 years of dust was finally brushed off of notes more detailed and objective than the venerable Yang's, once more revealing them to the light of day. Right, it must have been this girl. Director Lu pulled out a photograph. Because she had still been alive then and wouldn't have wanted to be disturbed, the venerable Yang hadn't kept her photograph in his personal notes. The seventh victim, Su Xiaolan, was a very good-looking young girl. She had apricot stone eyes with long corners extending towards her temples. When the photograph was taken, she'd put on a little makeup, looking red-lipped and white-toothed, with her chin in her hand. She had an odd, precocious look. The mention of the lips is making me think it's the girl that kind of lured the other girl into a false sense of security, but the ages aren't adding up. And also, like, if it's not clear yet, I completely basically forgot everything to do with this case, it seems. Oh goodness, okay, this is gonna be complicated. Su Xiaolan was a student at Jinshu Middle School then. When the crime occurred, she was in year 2 of junior middle school. Nang Chao asked, "Didn't I hear that the girl's family background was very bad? She was missing for days without her mother knowing. How could she have afforded to attend a private school of the time? She was a specially enrolled dance student. Her elementary school dance troupe teacher liked her very much and recommended her to Jinshu. Jinshu had a policy of waiving tuition fees for all specially enrolled students. Although both of her unusual family back Although because of her unusual family background and because she was always practicing with dance troupe, Su Shanlan often missed class. As time went on, she didn't fit in with students her own age, and she didn't have any friends. Wu Guangchun was her year 1 homeroom teacher and used that to lure her in and compel her, carry out a violation against her. Okay, that's strange. Taran couldn't resist putting in a word. If Wu Guangchun kidnapped and murdered 6 girls, why did he leave this girl alive? Good question. I had only just started working then. I was doing legwork for the investigation team and didn't participate in much. Director Liu thought back for a moment. The killer was already dead. We couldn't force his motive out of him. All of this and my elders' conjectures at the time, they wrote the concluding reports after the fact. There were 2 presumed reasons. First, many people around them knew that Su Xiaolan and Wu Guangchun were regularly in close contact, and if anything had happened to Su Xiaolan, it would have been very easy for the police to find him. So, Su Xiaolan was a very dangerous target for a murderer. There was even an elder who concluded at the time that the other 6 girls could have been substitutes for Su Xiaolan. Okay, that kind of makes sense. It sounded like there was no problem anywhere in the course of events. The human testimony and material evidence were all there. Oh, sorry, hold on, I skipped a paragraph. The second one is pure supposition on our part. Unlike the other victims, Su Xiaolan's family background was particular. The killer couldn't use a phone call to torment Su Xiaolan's family. If the process of making a phone call had some special meaning and purpose for him, then he would have been unable to obtain a sense of satisfaction from Su Xiaolan. That's also actually quite plausible. It sounded like there was no problem anywhere in this course of events. The human testimony and material evidence were all there. The logical and psychological motives all made sense. The only problem was, if the murderer from 20 years ago had already passed on, then who had taken Chutong? That is the question. Who would have known the details about the metal pencil box and the little bells? There could only be the relatives of Guofei, the victim in the first case, as well as the old criminal policeman who'd handled the case at the time, including Director Liu. In front of Director Liu's face, the people in the small conference room all fell silent for a time. Director Liu, however, rather calmly broke the silence himself. He stood and patted Luo Wenzhou on the shoulder. You take the lead on this. If there are any questions, report to Lao Teng, I think. I'll step back for the time being to avoid suspicion. In a while, I'll do a clear write-up of my whereabouts for the past few days. I'm afraid it won't be very easy to investigate the others who handle the case. I'll go ahead and say a few words for you, to forestall them feeling insulted and not cooperate when the time comes. Okay. I mean, on the one hand, I kind of want to take his words at face value because he's taking all the right steps, but also the fact that he's aware enough to be like, okay, I'm gonna write up my whereabouts. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. It also kind of implies that he's aware of all the things that they are going to be looking into to make sure that he is clear, which means that he could potentially manipulate that. And I'm being too cynical, but anyway, they're all older looking in the show, and actually older in age, if I remember correctly. Mm. Yeah, I think even um, Taran's girlfriend's niece, or like future girlfriend's niece, also looked a little bit older than was kind of expected, I think, which makes sense because if they had the actual ages, it would, number one, make it more difficult to film with them, and also be even more disturbing than it already was. Um, Oopsie, sorry. We also have to question the victim's relatives in the Lotus Mountain case. They may have said something to someone. Lowenjo raised an awkward point lightly. There is also Su Xiaoliang. She was around Wu Guangchen the longest. It's likely she knows something. We'll split up along 3 lines. Taran, continue following the tracks of those 18 children before the crime occurred, just in case. Don't overlook the boys. Shalan will be responsible for leading the people investigating the area around Chutong's house. Don't look around Chutong's house. Don't overlook the security cameras of any of the miscellaneous little shops around there. I'll think of a way to handle the rest. Sorry, that was a lot. The rest were all things like to offend people. Oh, the rest were all things likely to offend people. Why does it sound like Law and Joe's speciality? I know it's not, but still, it's kind of funny. Investigating the elders within their own system and making inquiries about the victims. Taran wanted to say something, but was cut off by Law and Joe's raised hand. Hurry up, don't waste words. It's been over 20 years. The evidence has disappeared, and the witnesses are gone. The hope for a result are remote. Your investigations are of the highest priority, in case the child is still alive. With this being brought up, Taran didn't dare to tarry. He had to file out along with Lang Chao. Lu Yuliang tore open the packaging of a new pack of cigarettes and pushed it across the table towards Lu and Zhou. You've left all the glorious but arduous tasks for yourself. You're keeping up a pretty good style. If I go, said Lo and Zhou, at most I'll get a telling off. The two of them, if they mess it up, it may come to a fight. Of course, whether I can find anything out when the telling off is over will depend on borrowing your venerable face. Oh, the way that's worded. I think that might have been exactly worded the same way in the drama as well. Of the old boys from back then, some have left, some have passed away. The ones who worked from beginning to end have mostly retired, and now Lao Jiang has been transferred away. As he spoke, Director Liu inexplicably felt rather melancholy. Melancholy? Why did I say melancholy like I'm frickin' from, um, what was it? Megamind. Why did I... Why did that happen? Oh my word. Okay, anyway, moving on from melancholy to melancholy. I'm the only one left to lead you Passel of Monkeys. It won't be many years now. Is retirement a bad thing? Lauren Joe smiled at him. My dreams are all about retiring, waking up naturally every day, going wherever I want, collecting my pension every month, taking my old spouse around everywhere, having all the little brats give up their seats for me when I get on the subway. Looking on the bright side of aging, I see. Lowenjo is honestly an MVP taking the worst job in his hands. Yeah, I love that as well. Lu Yu Liang very much wanted to foster his development. Although Lu Wenzhou was a little too young, luckily the old man wouldn't be retiring immediately. There were still some years left. If you pushed him along, it was possible he would amount to something. Hearing the fleckless discourse, Director Lu filled with anger. Then he once again thought of some gossip concerning young Lord Lu that couldn't be mentioned in polite society and became even more vexed. Pointing at Lu and Zhou, he said, "You don't even have a young spouse. Shut up. If you won't talk sense, get the hell out of my face." I mean, he's working on it, alright? He's working on getting a young spouse. I mean, we already had someone call him, what was it, Dad? Or was he calling himself Dad? I can't remember. I think he was calling himself Dad. Lo and Joe put a cigarette in his mouth, tucked the old case file under his arm, and duly prepared to get the hell out. But when he reached the door, Director Liu called him to a halt. "Do you have any rough ideas about this case?" With one hand on the conference room door, Lo and Joe's steps paused. There are two unresolved questions from back then. First, where the missing girls' bodies went. Second, Wu Guangchen's motives for calling the victims as families. I talked this case over with some people, and a friend said that it sounded like he wasn't aiming at the children, but at the grown-ups. That doesn't seem much like the average psychological characteristics of a pedophile. Also, while I think the two cases are connected, they weren't necessarily committed by the same person. How do you figure? Making a phone call and going in person to the victim's house are two different things. One is hiding behind a curtain. The other is being unable to resist personally taking the stage. The latter runs a much greater risk, and the criminal has to be more arrogant too. It's not just the anti-reconnaissance methods Wang Chao mentioned. All of Yan City was like a river. After decades of waste management, you could still see through to this silt on the river bed. Almost comprehend it all at a glance. It was clear and safe, but there were still rapids, and there were still undercurrents. The odds of the missing girl, Chu Tong, being found alive was growing increasingly remote, but for the countless other children her age, this was just an ordinary summer vacation, crammed with unremarkable makeup classes and extracurriculars, accompanied by the listless humming of cicadas and the drowsiness of waiting adolescents. Chinchin had her portfolio on her back and was waiting for her tardy parents at the bus stop by the Children's Palace's back gate. Oh no, okay, we're starting with this. I'm scared. Ooh. Bored, she took out her tablet to play. Suddenly, a shadow fell in front of her. Chinchin looked up and saw a blind, humpback old man arrive near her, his face unwittingly turned towards her. Chinchin felt oddly uneasy. She remembered what the she remembered what the Dagogo had, who had treated her to cream puff, had said that day, and hastily moved a few cautious steps away, drawing closer to the crowd waiting for the bus nearby, while stealthily keeping an eye on the stranger. Just then, the bus pulled up to the stop, and a tight-packed crowd boarded on one after another. The area around the bus stop sign emptied. Only she and the blind old man were left. Oh, this is giving me the creeps. Suddenly, the blind old man tapped the ground and stepped over towards her. In an instant, the hairs rose on the back of Chinchin's neck, and she turned and ran towards the children's palace. Turning the corner, she accidentally bumped into someone. The other person cried, "Ow!" and the thing she was holding fell and scattered over the ground. The person was a girl a little older than her, wearing a floral patterned dress, her hair down in two braids. Chinchin hurriedly apologized. I'm sorry." The girl looked at her and didn't get angry. As she crouched to pick up her book, she asked, "Why were you running?" Chinchin hurriedly helped her. "There is a weird person over there. I was a little scared." Hearing this, the girl looked over to where she was pointing. "There's no one there." "Where?" Chinchin turned her head. The bus stop was deserted. There wasn't a single person. The girl looked at Chinchin. "What grade are you in?" "I'll be in the 6th grade when school starts." "Oh, then I'm a year older than you." With the books under one arm, the girl naturally took Chinchin by the hand with the other hand. "Are you scared? How about I wait with you for a while?" Chinchin couldn't have asked for better. "I'm attending the summer photography class here." The girl's long lashes drooped, and she looked at Chinchin with a smile. "I'm called Su Lao Zhan." "Mm-hmm." Sorry, I said Su Lao Zhan, it's Su Luo Zhan. Oh no. This is very, very scary. I'm sorry, guys. Just give me a second here. We've only done one chapter, and I am already freaking terrified. I really shouldn't be doing these at night, I don't think. Because last night I had to watch a comedy sketch or something afterwards just to calm down. Chapter 43, Humbud Humbud 10. In 20 years, Lotus Mountain had undergone a bone flattening, skin swamping renovation. Swapping renovation. Its face now presented an entirely different appearance. The streets and buildings were seamlessly joined together, their style identically modern, more dignified even than in the city. Only the roadside trees had not yet had time to develop their shade, dimly revealing the haste beneath the heavy makeup. Lowendraw drove a few circles before finding the nondescript newsstand. A man wearing reading glasses was sitting inside, his back stooped, minding the stand. You could have said he was middle-aged, or you could have said he was old. Looking at his face alone, he looked like he hadn't yet reached retirement age, but his whole body was permeated with a heavy lethargy, as if he was lingering at death's door. It was the hottest part of the afternoon. The surface of the street had been baked by the sun until oil was coming out of it. Lowendraw pushed his sunglasses up to the top of his head and walked in front of the newsstand. "I'll have an iced soda water." The newsstand's owner heard him and put aside the book he was reading. He bent down and chose a cold drink, thickly covered with frost, then handed it over. Lowendraw stepped under the newsstand's sunshade, twisted open the bottle cap, and downed half the bottle in one go. Already having worked overtime, he spent all day engaged in battles of wits with all kinds of his fellow professionals. Relying on Director Liu's face and carrying the banner of inquiring about the old case, he had attacked by innuendos, trying to determine whether there was anything suspicious about the other party. They all belonged to the same system. Their tricks all followed the same lines. They went back and forth, each scene comparable to a scene of a palace intrigue in a television drama. Severely fatiguing. Now, Lowenjo's head was wooden inside, his gaze dull. He drank until he was chilled all the way through, then leaned under the sunshade, relaxing entirely. The newsstand owner saw that he had no intention of leaving immediately and stuck out his head to say, "Hey, young fellow, I have popsicles too. Do you want one?" Lowenjo waved a hand. "I've drunk my belly full of gas. I won't be able to eat. I'll rest here a while." The newsstand owner said an "all right" and moved over a long-legged plastic stool for him. "Sit down, then. On a hot day like this, no one has it easy. What kind of work do you do?" "Oh, goodness. It's okay. This is a messed up case. Reading it for the first time was really fun and an excitingly nerve-wracking way for me too, but I'm very used to and desensitized to this genre." Yeah, no, I'm very much not, unfortunately, but we're still enjoying it. It's fine. The new sound. Oh, sorry. Law and Joel put the soda water bottle on his. Sorry, my brain broke for a moment reading soda water, but then I realized like there is the still and the sparkling water. I'm assuming that's what he's referring to. Um, where was I? Law and Joel put the soda water bottle on his knee and lightly shook it a couple of times. "I'm with the police." Newsstand owner had one foot up on the sand's small threshold. Hearing the word police, he froze in place. After a long time, he turned his head. He took off his reading glasses and folded them away. His lips trembled faintly. He lowered his voice. "I've applied to have the charge withdrawn. The government approved it too." "I know," said Lowenjaw. "Uncle Gore, I don't mean anything by it. I just wanted to talk to you about Feifei's case from 20 years ago." The newsstand owner was Guo Heng. Guo Heng had killed Wu Guangchen, then had been sentenced to prison for deliberately killing. Later his sentence had been reduced, and he had been released upon completion of the term 2 years earlier. Naturally, he had lost his job. 20 years had passed. Everything had changed. His parents and relatives had died or left. His wife had divorced him before the killing. He had no relatives or connections, alone in the world. Returned to the fully changed Lotus Mountain district, he was doing a bit of business to make his living. "There's nothing to talk about." Guo Heng's face hardened. "She's been dead over 20 years, and I personally sent her killer on his way. I was sentenced. I went to jail. There it is. What else do you want to know?" Lowenjaw tried to soften his voice. "It's like this. You see, I haven't come here to tear up your scars for no good reason. We've encountered a case also involving a missing little girl. There's evidence that shows that there may be a link with the old case." "What linked?" Guo Heng asked coldly. "A girl 11 years old wearing a floral patterned dress when she disappeared. 3 days after she disappeared, the criminal sent her parents a recording. Aside from the girl's crying and screaming, it contained another sound, like someone shaking a metal box full of small bells." Luanjua knew that the other was fully on his guard. Therefore, he took directly into. Sorry, hold on. Therefore, he looked directly into Guo Heng's eyes as sincerely as he could, rejecting all irrelevant description, using the shortest phrases to explain the matter clearly. The elders who had experience dealing with the old case said the circumstances were exactly the same as when Fei Fei was murdered. "So I wanted to ask you a little." He hadn't finished when Go Hung cynically interrupted him. You mean interrogate a little? The killer is dead. The only person left who remembers this are the police and me. Of course, if something bad's been done, it couldn't possibly be the police. It could only be me, with my record. It isn't only you. I've already been through the policeman who handled the case, said Luo Wenzhou. I don't suspect anything. I only want to understand in detail what happened. Without warning, Guo Heng's mood suddenly erupted. He roared at Luo Wenzhou. Back then, I looked everywhere for someone to talk to about the case. None of you listened. No one wanted to understand. Now I've stabbed him and gone to jail, and here you come again. My daughter has been dead over 20 years. I don't want to talk about her. I don't want to. What the hell have you been doing all this time? Growing up, mostly. I think. Like, because he's still in his 30s. Luo Joe opened his mouth, bit back the justification he nearly blurted out, then in a low voice said, I'm sorry. Go away. Go. Scram. Goheng grabbed him by the shoulder and pushed him out. I don't have anything to say. If you think I'm suspicious, you're welcome to come and arrest me. I've been through it all before anyway. For the rest of it, no comment. The next time you come, remember to flash your ID. If I'd known before you were the police, I wouldn't have sold you a drop of spit. Oh. Uncle Guo, said Luo Wenzhou. Guoheng's eyes were red, and the veins at the corners of his forehead stood out. Scram! Luo Wenzhou's mood really couldn't be called gentle, but at the time, even if his rage had towered towards the heavens, he still wouldn't have been able to let it out. The scorching sun directly overhead spurted its flames towards him. He shut his mouth and used the tip of his tongue to count each and every one of his teeth. Then he looked down and got out his wallet, pulled out a photograph from it, and held it in front of Guo Heng. This child is called Chutong, said Luo Wenzhou. When school starts, she'll be attending 6th grade. Her studies are good. She was attending the 16th middle school recruitment summer camp a year early. She's normally very sensible, always taking the lead. It's almost the 5th day since she went missing. Uncle Guo, you know what 5 days means? I heard that back then you made an intense study of child kidnapping cases, so you should understand the chances of finding this child are already remote. Guo Heng's gaze slowly fell on Chu Tong's photograph. With 20 years between them, the two men stood opposed to each other on the street in high summer. After a long time, Guo Heng's fiercely undulated chest gradually calmed. But each day we don't find a body is another day we can't abandon the search, said Luo Wenzhou. It's too sad about the children who vanished without a trace back then. We can't let what happened to Guo Fei happen again. But now we really don't have any other leads. We can only beg for your help. We have to wait until the asshole finishes a 7th offense and leaves traces before this can end. Goheng's expression altered slightly. The girl in the photograph was smiling at him with her head tilted, revealing a slightly crooked canine tooth. It may have been a coincidence, but looking closely, Chutong actually had some similarities to Guo Fei. Luo Wenzhou's tone relaxed. I just have a few questions. I'll finish asking and then I'll go. I won't bother you. Guo Heng looked at him, silently pursed his lips for a moment, then turned and went into the newsstand. Luo Wenzhou hastily followed. Did you mention the fact about the bells in the pencil box to anyone back then? I did. Guo Heng had become over-agitated just now. His voice was still somewhat hoarse. I mentioned it to the police working the case. After you abandoned it, my friends and family who helped me keep investigating all knew some details. Could you give me a list of names? Said Luo Wenzhou. Guo Heng looked at him. When Luanjo thought he was about to flare up again, the man only curled up in his chair and wearily rubbed his face. Feifei's home-reading teacher, a relative who worked at the telephone exchange back then. Oh, some sanitation workers near the waste transfer station the phone call came from. They may have understood some of it, but too confused. There are things I repeated so many times to so many people I can't recall clearly. I mean, it's not his fault, but at the same time, this is gonna make things so much more complicated. The poor man, honestly, can you imagine the unending trauma? Yeah, to lose your child and have no peace since for a decade? Yeah. This is unfortunately a very heavy case. Then we'll pass on to something else. Lowenjo got out a palm-sized notebook and sat on the long-legged stool from before. Where did you start your investigation from then? How did you find Wu Guangchun? Gohan's gaze went past him, falling on a small mirror hanging on the newsstand's door. The mirror reflected the man's withered face and white hair, making him in a flash feel the passing of time. He looked at Lo Wen-jo. If the young girl from back then were still alive, maybe she would be a few years older than this young man. The police investigation wasn't making any progress. I felt anxious. I couldn't resist going to search for myself. I went over to that waste management station a few times, the place where the killer made the phone call. Back then, garbage often wasn't taken care of quickly. It smelled awful. No one lived nearby, and no buses went past. You had to drive a car if you wanted to go there. And coming from a county town, you'd have to pass a toll road. There weren't so many people on the road then. The police could tell where all the cars had come from. If there had been a problem with any of them, they would have found it. So I thought then, could the person who had kidnapped my daughter have come from outside? Because there was a highway from the city to Lotus Mountain that made a half circle to avoid the mountain, and it passed nearby. Although there wasn't a road, there was a large slope. I went to look myself. A car couldn't go down, but an ordinary adult could walk down. Sorry about that. Lowenjo said, "You're saying that the person who kidnapped Guofei left Lotus Mountain with the child and on the way for some reason stopped his car on the highway, climbed halfway down the mountain carrying the child they'd kidnapped, and went to make a phone call next to a garbage dump. Why would he do that?" Gohun gave a slightly taunting smile. When I told the police working the case my idea, they asked why in exactly that tone of voice. No, Luanjo adjusted his emotional state. According to your inferences, the kidnapper came from out of town. Wu Guangchun really did come from out of town, and per the investigation, neither did he spend much time in Lotus Mountain. Then how could he have been familiar with a transfer station that even the locals didn't go to? He'd kidnapped a half-grown girl, not a baby weighing a few kilograms. To leave his car in the middle of the highway and climb down a mountain carrying such a big child to an unfamiliar place to commit an offense against her. The danger is too great. How could he know that there wouldn't be workers passing by to collect the waste from the transfer station? That isn't logical. Guang said, "Has your logic caught the criminal?" I mean, that's not fair. He hasn't been on this for very long. Lo and Joe was temporarily at a loss for words. The police also told me that it was impossible, and they established a special investigation team. I thought a special investigation team definitely had more expertise than me. Let them investigate. I only needed to wait. And in the end, there really was nothing I could do. I had to keep investigating along the impossible line of thought. I went to the area around Feifei's school and asked around at all the guest houses and hotels one after another. The teacher helped me a lot. The teacher had come back to work after retiring. She was very old. She'd already passed on. She, she's already passed on. She wouldn't have be the one you're after. The Wenjol said, during this process, you found Wu Guangchun, who'd gone to Lotus Mountain to recruit students. I heard that he stayed in the hospital at the time. Why did you suspect him? Jinshu had money and flashed it around. The teachers who came to recruit students drove over in several cars. They came together, and when they were done with the business, some went back early because they had things to do at home, and some stayed on to play around in Lotus Mountain's limestone caves. Some had left midway because they got sick. They left in several groups. I found the cheapest guest house around Jinshu and followed each of them in turn, Guoheng said. At first I didn't suspect Wu Gongchen, but once when I was wandering around the area, I saw a child furtively following him. Interesting. Lo Wenjie sat up straight at once. A little boy wearing Jinshu uniform. He said there was a girl there was a girl in his class who was always missing class for no reason. He was the class leader, and the homeroom teacher told him to find out what was going on. The girl hadn't gone to class, and she hadn't gone home either. He'd clearly seen the girl go find this teacher Wu after getting out of school before, but when he went to ask the teacher about it, he wouldn't admit it. I thought at once that something was off. Can you understand that? If you had a daughter of your own that age who'd gone missing just like that, you'd also be sensitive about everything. He's not wrong. You told the policeman who had transferred to the city bureau about this? Surname Young. He'd been at the Lotus Mountain Public Security Bureau. He was the only one I knew, said Guoheng, but he didn't believe me. Lo and Joe didn't make explanations for his shifu. He only followed up. What happened then? I could only investigate for myself. The boy from Jinshu helped me quite a bit too. One time, the boy suddenly paged me and I ran over to have a look. I just happened to see Wu Gongchen leading a girl. The girl was struggling, and he dragged her away. Oh no. Separated from the event by many years, when Guoheng spoke of it, his fist still clenched. It was a long while before he forced himself to keep going. I made a child who'd passed on the information leave and follow them to Wu Gongchen's house. I saw that asshole take the girl home. At his door, I saw him do some nauseating things. According to the record in the case file, Guo Heng had pretended to be collecting the electricity bill, knocked on Wu Gongchen's door, then stabbed him. Lo and Joe said, what was the boy's name? Yeah, because I'm kind of getting stalker vibes from him, and I don't know if it's because of what I'm reading or because that's was the conclusion in the show and I'm just not remembering it, but I'm like subconsciously remembering it. His surname was Shu. Guo Heng thought for a while. I think he was called Shu Wen Chao. Lo and Joe said goodbye to Guo Heng. Before he'd even driven away, he hastily passed on the information to Taran, telling him to summon Su Xiaolan and Shu Wenchao from that year's Year 2 class at Jinshu Middle School. Then he raced back to the city. Meanwhile, that same day, Fei Du also happened to leave the city. Did you make an appointment yesterday, Mr. Fei? The receptionist flipped through the record. sneakily looking over at the attractive visitor. The sanatorium was between the mountains and the sea and had a garden that could be described as tasteful. Though it was a medical establishment, there wasn't a trace of a hospital smell or the stink of illness in the reception hall. All around was brightness and cleanliness, and the soft voices of pretty receptionists. The leisurely sound with the tide and the piano melody were playing. Okay, because I'm not sure how far we still have to go. Seems like quite a little bit. I think I'm quickly gonna take my 10-minute break now, and then I will see you guys at 10 past. Okay, I'm back. Let's see if we can bash through the the four chapters that I wanted to do today. Pull up the comments again. Okay, please just also confirm if the audio is still okay and everything like that. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, great, let's go. Um, at a glance, it seemed. Oh, sorry. Okay. Wow, that's what a great start. At a glance, it simply looked like a seaside resort. Room 407. I almost said something really stupid there that I'm so glad I caught myself with. In the acute ward. Please come inside. A staff member will take you through. Fairy nodded at her, pulled a dewy, fragrant lily from the big bouquet in the bag at his side, and stuck it into the vase on the front desk. Thank you. I think the flower goes very well with you. Then he left behind the crimson-cheeked young lady and went inside. The people in the acute ward were those who had lost the ability to move. It had a special kind of peacefulness. The steps of the medical personnel were hurried, and the thick shade of trees spread everywhere. Following the signs, Fedu came to room 407. A doctor had been waiting for him there and greeted him familiarly. President Fay, I guess you could come today. Sorry, I guess you would come today. I just happened to have some time to spare. Fedu pulled the flowers. Why am I struggling so much? Fedu put the flowers at the man's bedside. How is it? Overall, very smooth, said the doctor. Although it's already been 3 years, the likelihood that he'll wake up is small. His family needs to psychologically prepare. Fedu responded without any expression. He tilted his head, examined the man in the hospital bed, and civilly answered, I know. You've gone to a great deal of trouble all these years. The doctor met his gaze and, without reason, was startled. There was a moment where he thought this young man's cold and withdrawn gaze didn't look at all like he was looking at his father. It didn't even look like he was looking at a living person. He seemed to be examining a not especially satisfactory ornament that he could just as well do without. The doctor's mind was already envisioning a complete set of wealthy family drama and seizing the throne plots. He didn't dare to speak out of turn. He said goodbye to Fedu and hurried away. Fedu urbanely watched the doctor leave, put his hands behind his back, and walked a few circles around the man's hospital bed. Oh, sorry, hospital room. The middle-aged man in the hospital bed lay there wholly insensible, surrounded by a bewildering array of medical apertures. Why am I struggling so much? Apparatuses. He seemed to be well taken care of. There wasn't a single white hair on his head. Oh wow, okay. Looking closely, his features were very similar to Fedu's, but the temperament was completely different. Though he lay there entirely unmoving, he still gave off a keen and sombre feeling, like cold marble. Finally, Fedu stopped in a corner of the room. There was a small calendar hanging there. The nurse must have been careless. The date was from a few days ago. That's interesting. He flipped the calendar to the proper date, the last day of July. It was his birthday, and of the two people who had given life to him, one lay in a sanatorium and the other lay underground. Fadu turned and for a moment looked the man up and down with an indiscernible expression. Suddenly he reached out a hand towards the man's oxygen tube. In the peaceful hospital room, the medical apparatus let out a regular rumble. On the face of the young man who had just given a girl a flower, there wasn't a trace of warmth. Ooh. I'm guessing they want us to like dun dun dun, but I just feel nothing for Fadu's dad, and maybe that's my mistake. Maybe I'll stop feeling nothing for him and actually start feeling something for him at some point, but not yet. I'm just very suspicious about the calendar. I feel like that's a very specific detail to include in the story. Chapter 44, Humbug Humbug 11. Fadu suddenly smiled, turning his head to blow a kiss to the hospital room security camera. Scared you? He bent and picked up a card from the small table next to him. This was one of the characteristic services provided by a high-priced private sanatorium. For the relatives of patients who had no means of communicating, it could be hard to unburden themselves in undulated jabber, so the sanatorium provided pens and small cards that the patient's relatives could write a few words on, passing along comparatively tangible emotions. With a somewhat ironic look at the man in the hospital bed, Fadu wrote without introduction or signature, "I hope you can hold out a few more years." I wonder why. Some hints of possible patricide, we love that. And I feel like they actually amped it up in the show versus here on the page, which is an interesting difference. The private sanatorium's fees weren't cheap. The expense of him laying there on its own was enough to support several doctors and nurses. After all, there were some people who, in their whole lifetimes, could only bring some benefit to the people around them during the years they spent lying in insensate. I don't think I pronounced that correctly. Outside the window, the blazing sun burned like fire. In the hospital room, the central air conditioning maintained a constant temperature year round. Under the drawn out leafy shade, there was a chill in the air. Having passed along the emotion of seeing you unwell makes me feel better, oh my word, I love the fact that that was worded that way. I know I shouldn't, but I do. Fadu, seeming to have accomplished his yearly duty, drove back to the city alone. Without any traffic, it was 4 hours from the seaside sanatorium to Yan City. Fadu had arranged with Dr. Bai to come and borrow a book from her in the evening. He had already formally concluded his lengthy years of regular counseling, but he still maintained his friendship with Dr. Bai. As before, he would often go borrow some books she recommended. If nothing unexpected occurred, a day of long-distance driving, a visit to a human vegetable, borrowing a book concerning mental illness, and taking it home to read halfway into the night before lying down to sleep were the sum total of his arrangement for his 22nd birthday. Well, if that isn't depressing, my goodness. Fadu ordinarily went where the fun was, but all the people who were comparatively familiar with him knew that on his birthday, the anniversary of his mother's death, and any happened upon holiday, he would be out of sight and out of contact. Even a person as undiscerning as a Jiang Donglai wouldn't bother him at these times. He wouldn't have been able to bother him even if he wanted to. President Fei, normally on 24 hours a day, would be unreachable. The traffic conditions on the way back to Yan City were poor. The highway leading to the city was jammed up into a mess. He would be an hour later than anticipated. Petty was rather exhausted. He could only wait, relying on the car's radio to keep awake. He happened to hear Yan City's police force collecting leads concerning the missing girl Chu Tong from all the city's residents, especially around the schools, children's palace, and summer training courses and camps. If you discover any suspicious individuals, please notify the police at once. Also, we remind our friends who have families that it's summer vacation now and you must look out for the safety of children in your household. How come the program suddenly turned into a hazard notice about open water swimming? Law and Draw only returned to the city bureau around the quitting time, feeling that the 3 immortal souls and the 7 mortal forms were all about to evaporate out of the top of his head. Oh my word! Thereupon he rudely poured himself a cup from the pot of tea brewed by some unknown person and drank it. However much Lang Chao running over wanted to stop him, there wasn't time. Lang Chao's anguished wail, "Boss, that's the slimming tea I just brewed." Law and Draw paused for a moment, then without turning a hair, he downed the other half of the pot. At this moment, never mind slimming tea, provided that it was liquid, he wouldn't have passed up drinking insecticide. Oh damn! Having finished, he wiped his mouth. What did the stakeout at Chu Tong's house turn up? Have Shu Wen Chao and Su Xiaolan been found? We reviewed all the security cameras from the shops around the estate, counting package delivery, food delivery, milk delivery, and realtors. 40-some people come by every day. Luckily, they all wear uniforms, and we were able to call each of their companies to confirm the employees' identities and whereabouts at the time of the crime. There were remaining questions about 4 of them, and we brought them back to the city bureau to cooperate with the investigation, Yang Chao said. Apart from that, we made a list of all the people coming into the estate during off-peak hours. There are over 80 altogether. We're just comparing them against the neighborhood committee's record of permanent residents. Hearing this, Lowendral's head, although about to explode from heat, swelled up further. It was fortunate that City Bureau could command a great deal of police manpower, otherwise would they be investigating until the end of time? Meng Chao continued, "We've already found Shu Wen Chao. Taran is inside having a talk with him. Su Xiaolan can't come. She's gone." Mm-hmm. Lo Wenjaw casually asked, "Out of town, or did she go abroad?" "No," said Lang Chao. "I don't mean she's not in the city. She's not on this planet. She's dead." Lo Wenjaw's footsteps paused for a moment. "So young?" "After that business, nothing went right for her. Her dancing came to nothing, and her grades were poor. She barely managed to get into vocational college, then dropped out halfway through. She didn't have any regular employment, relying on good looks and youth to go around with some rich people. Before she was 20, she'd given birth out of wedlock, and afterwards she lived very chaotically. She became ill and passed away 2 months ago. Here's her information." Lang Chao passed him a thin, foul pouch. Lo and Joe took it and flipped through it. Oh, this is so grim. Okay, let me just quickly check something. He had soon finished reading it because her life had been too short, and because there really was nothing to say for it. Inside was her past addresses, contact information, 2 disciplinary actions from the time she was at school, a record of once being detained for drunk and disorderly conduct, and a death certificate. Last of all was a photograph taken shortly after her death. The woman, only a little older than 30, already showed the ravages of time. Her thin cheeks were stretched tightly over her cheekbones. Her chin was razor sharp, and there were lines around her mouth. There was faded makeup on her face, as if it couldn't be washed off. Looking very closely, it was just possible to see some vestiges of the little beauty she had been in her youth. In the long corridor, Lo and Jo and Lang Chao exchanged a helpless look, and this was the end of the last surviving girl. "Do you know what, Captain Lo?" said Lang Chao. "Sometimes when I see these things, I think that surviving is an ugly thing." Lo and Jo hit Lang Chao on the back of the head with a craft paper pouch. "Morning to night, you're so full of ideas. Go write some books. What do you want to be a police officer for? The most important objective now is to find Trutong. Tell me, what does Shu Wen Chao do?" Shu Wen Chao was a freelance photographer. He was very tall and refined. He could have been described as a man of striking appearance. Suddenly asked down to the security bureau, it was hard to avoid being somewhat nervous. His hand moved back and forth under the table. Taran poured him a cup of water. "We don't mean anything by it. We'd like you to take time and remember some things." Chu Chao lowered his head and pursed his lips, avoiding Taran's gaze. He quietly thanked him. Standing in front of the surveillance feed, Lo and Jo and Lang Chao heard Taran ask mildly, "Did you attend Jinxie Middle School for Junior Middle?" Shuwen Chao very elegantly sipped some water. "Yes." "Do you remember having a classmate back then called Su Xiaolan?" Shuwen Chao's fingers gave a tremble. He was silent for a long time, then spoke obscurely. "I remember." I can't remember what his involvement with things are, but I just get a stalkerish vibe from him. And I don't know if it's me being judgmental. Taran asked, "Could you tell me about her?" There was nothing ambiguous about these words, but Shu Wen Chao didn't seem to have understood. He stared for a moment. "Hmm?" Taran said, "Tell me about Su Xiaolan." The fingers laying on Chao's knees suddenly tightened, clutching at his own knuckles. "Oh, I haven't been in touch with her for many years. She was a rather cheerful girl. She wore her hair long and she liked to wear all kinds of floral patterned dresses." Hearing these words, the faces of Taran and those watching on the surveillance feed all tensed. But Shu and Chao's words had come to an abrupt stop. His gaze went back and forth between Taran and the clerk several times. Suddenly he said, "Did you bring me here because of the girl they were talking about on the radio? I heard on my way here." "Then I won't go around in circles anymore," said Taran. "How much do you know concerning the case of Wu Guangchen kidnapping, killing, and sexually assaulting female children?" Shu and Chao. Sorry, just give me a second. Yeah. Um. Mm, where was I? Shu and Chao thought with intense concentration. "Not much. I was little then. No one would tell a child about those things in detail, right?" Turan said. "But the father of one of the victims says that he found you, and the reason Su Shaolan was rescued was that you told him she was in danger." It was over 20 years ago. I can't quite remember." You'd think he'd have the memory of that seared into his mind, but okay. Sorry, if you guys can hear that, that's my dad trying to coax Juliet to come and sleep. Earth Sky, the photographer, I was so surprised to see his familiar face in the show, but hey, he was in Untamed, was a fun little thing. Speaking with this person was especially strenuous. He wasn't a criminal. The police couldn't forcibly interrupt his lengthy periods of silence. They could only sit and wait for him to speak, like a person suffering from mental. No, I'm not going to say that. Asked a question, he thought about it for half a year, then at last gave an equivocal answer. It was all variations on seems like it, or really, or I guess, or I don't really recall. Taran spent over an hour questioning him over and over again. Having drunk 2 whole bottles of water, Shu and Chao maintained an empty, wandering dejection, demonstrating total ignorance. Then Chao said, I really want to punch him. Boss, do you think he's our suspect? Just because he mentioned floral pattern dresses? When Joe shook his head. Middle schools were very strict back then. Students wore identical uniforms. The girls either had to have all their hair off their faces in a ponytail or cut it to their earlobes. The restrictions were only relaxed for especially enrolled students for the sake of appearances. If Su Xiaolan was the only special one in the class, it's normal for him to remember. But Taran was saying to Shu Wenchao, but I think it's a little strange. Wu Guangchun's case must have caused a sensation at the time. How could you, who personally played a part in it, not remember clearly? Very strange, shall we say? Shu Wenchao smiled mildly. During junior and middle school, I got very sick. I had a fever that wouldn't go down and nearly died. Though I pulled through in the end, it's possible it damaged my brain. My memory hasn't been very good ever since. My reactions are a little slow. Sorry, officer. I don't know if I believe him, but okay. This explanation sounded perfectly reasonable. Turan could only nod helplessly. Are you married, Mr. Shu? Shu Wenchao shook his head. On the night of the 27th of this month. Where were you? This time, Shu Wenchao didn't hesitate. He quickly answered, At home? Alone? I'm a bachelor. Of course I was alone. What were you doing at home? Reading a book about composition techniques. Turan's gaze sharpened slightly. Mr. Shu, in order to cooperate with the investigation, could we request your vehicle's location record? Yes, it's parked outside. Shu and Chao looked back at him calmly. Do you have any other questions? Can I leave? I have work tomorrow. There are some things I need to prepare when I get back. Taran's eyes turned to the security camera. He heard Law and Jaw say to him over his earbud, Let him leave. I've made arrangements. From the time he leaves, there will be people watching him 24 hours a day. Okay, but what if he removes the information from like his car's location tracker or whatever you call it? Taran stood and shook hands with Shu Wenchao. You can leave. Thank you for your cooperation. I'll see you to the door. At this time, Shu Wenchao's body language finally relaxed slightly. At Taran's gesture, he turned to leave. Just then, as if idly chatting, Taran quietly said beside him, Private schools must be very strict. I heard the teachers are all desperate to get high rates of enrollment in higher education. Shu Wenchao said, We just had to study hard. It's a good habit. You must not have had any time for young love. If you said one word to a girl, there would be 8 teachers staring at you. Even if you liked someone, you'd have to hold back. With one hand on the doorframe, Taran looked meaningfully at Shu and Chao. Were there any girls you liked, Mr. Shu? A specially enrolled student like Su Xiaolan must have been very noticeable in your class. Shu and Chao was taken unaware. His expression altered at once. The hands hanging at his side nervily picked at the seams of his pants. After a while, he forced a smile. Who doesn't like pretty girls when they're young? But she's dead. There's no sense in talking about it. Officer, there's no need to see me out. Why does the fact that he felt the need to point out that she's dead and thus it doesn't bear talking about come off as so gross? Like, is that just me? Taran frowned faintly. He had only discovered Su Shaolan was dead when he'd wanted to summon her. Up to the present moment, he hadn't mentioned the fact to Shu and Chao. Oh, that's true! So had Shu and Chao, who hadn't been in touch with her for many years, learned the sad news from a concerned classmate? Or, having said those words, Shu and Chao quickly walked away without a backward look. At the same time, the policemen, ready to take turns watching Shu and Chao, arranged their shifts and left silently under the cover of night to follow him. When Luo and Zhuo left the city bureau, dragging his steps somewhat, it was already past 8. He didn't go directly home. Although Director Lu had stepped back to avoid suspicion, the situation was like Director Zhang's. Zhang Donglai had been a close relative under serious suspicion. By comparison, Director Lu at most could be said to have some connection to the old case. He wasn't a major operator. Someone less scrupulous may not have made anything of the connection. With the scrupulous leader, it wasn't proper for his subordinates to be too easygoing, especially after running around all day using up the old man's face. Luo and Zhuo planned to bring Director Lu a box of peaches brought back from Lotus Mountain, and in the process give him a simple progress report. He called Director Lu, mentioning only the peaches, not the case. Lu Yuliang agreed at once and gave an address. Your auntie's colleague is getting married. She only decided to go this evening and didn't tell me in advance. I've gone over to my little sister's place to scrounge a meal. You can come over here. Lu Wenzhou turned on his GPS and entered the words North City Chengguang Road. Feidu flashed his headlights and saw a road sign reading Chengguang Road, exit 1.5 kilometers. He let out a slight breath. This return trip had taken over 6 hours. Oof! That's a lot. There was traffic everywhere and no place to rest. His back was so sore that it was about to go numb. Only now did the road conditions ease somewhat. Feidu sped his car right up to the speed limit, considering how he should apologize to Dr. Bai. But just as he had driven the last stretch and was planning to turn off onto the side road, a car suddenly charged out up ahead. It came up right in front of him. Not only did it not brake, it accelerated, heading right for him. There was no time to make way. Feidu slammed the brakes down to the floor. Okay. Like, I remember this happening, so I'm not surprised, but still. Next, the whole car shook tremendously. His ears rang. The airbag pushed him back into his seat. Feidu's eyes dimmed. His insides turned over, and there was a sharp pain in his left forearm. His consciousness blurred for a second or two, but the sharp sound of car alarms and human voices startled him awake. A passerby quickly ran over, shouting, and pulled open the door of his car. The summer night's turbid, warm wind hit him full in the face. There was a moment when the thought slipped through his not very clear consciousness. Retribution comes very quickly. Oh, that's interesting. Lo and Joe was just thinking gratefully that the traffic situation was all right when he encountered an accident up ahead. The flow of traffic stopped. He sighed heavily and, like the other drivers, stuck his head out to look. As soon as he looked up, from far off he saw a big SUV, a good bit taller than all of the other cars, sprawled out at the exit like a crane amongst chickens. Winjo's heart gave a jump. Wasn't the car the same model as the one Fedu had flashed around in front of Taran? Are we ready? Are we ready? I don't know if I'm ready. What a crappy birthday up until this point. Like, it's hopefully gonna get better in a few seconds, but still, what a crappy birthday up until this point. Chapter 45, Humbert 12. There was sweat at the corners of Fedu's forehead, whether from the heat or from pain. His face was paper white. From between his teeth he squeezed out the words, "Are you done?" Lowenjaw stood to one side with a grave expression, as if he were observing a moment of silence. He was silent for 2 seconds. Then he really couldn't hold back any longer. He turned his head aside and howled with laughter. "Young fellow, this won't do," said the old orthopedic physician who was taking care of Fedu's injured arm as he delivered a long-winded speech. "I can see your lifestyle isn't good, right? You young people these days, staying up all night, not exercising, spending all day sitting there playing on your computers. Can your health be any good? It baffles me. What's so fun about that stupid piece of junk? Don't you think it's alright just because you're young? Getting osteo... let me try. Osteoporosis in your 20s and 30s can happen. President Fay, who had never stayed up late playing on the computer, was so wronged he couldn't speak. Near the Chingguan Road exit, Feidu's passenger side door had been hit by a car suddenly coming from the right side. The driver responsible was a beginner who'd only gotten his license 2 months ago. The guy had been taken away in an ambulance. Apparently he wasn't familiar with road signs, had missed his turn and then realized that he'd somehow gone the wrong way. Just happened to see Feidu's rather tank-like SUV coming towards him. He'd panicked and hit the gas pedal instead of the brakes. That was the conclusion issued by the urgently dispatched traffic police. That kind of seems a little bit convenient, but we'll let it go. In short, the causes of the accident were that driving schools were incompetent and Feidu was unlucky. Luckily, Feidu had been driving a car with a highly advanced safety system today, and his own reaction had been very timely. Therefore, it was the other party's car that had been more seriously damaged. He, for the most part, had been more scared than hurt. He hadn't even broken his glasses. Though while the glasses were staunch glasses, President Faye's precious flesh paled in comparison somewhat. His left forearm had been fractured by the airbag springing out. Of course, this poor potato had to be injured by the airbag, and nothing else. Oh my word, Feidu, you really do have some very bad luck. Feidu persisted in thinking that it had been because of the coincidence of his posture. Even more unlucky, by some happenstance, this rare unfortunate predicament of Feidu's had been seen by that wicked piece of work, Law and Jaw. Such a wicked piece of work, indeed. Law and Jaw had, while he was on his way, accompanied him on his day trip to the hospital. After learning the state of his injury, he had picked up President Fay's pair of firm, wheeled glasses and laughed uncontrollably. The depressed feelings caused by a whole day's stressful work was swept away at once. Oh goodness. We are being violently thrown into the queer herd comfort bantry shenanigans. Finally, we need this. We do indeed need this. This is the salvation that we were waiting for. Doctor, this type of bourgeoisie delinquent doesn't play on the computer. They go out at night for music and singing. Lowendraw, eager to watch the fur fly, supplied color and emphasis from the sidelines. Look at that face. It's vacant, a testimony to the dissipated life. Though he's reading sorry, through his reading glasses, his large eyes like a dragonfly's, the old physician scrutinized Feydu's vampire-like face. Oh, there is something of that. Feydu, dot dot dot. I've set it for you. The fracture isn't serious. Come get a cast off. Come get the cast off in a while. Remember not to engage in any strenuous activity. No smoking, no drinking, no sex. The old physician urged seriously. Also, you must be sure to take calcium supplements, young fellow. Otherwise, in another decade, you'll just snap. The last sentence somehow hit Lowendraw right in the funny bone. He was about to lose his mind. Being prepared to live the rest of his life based on this joke. Sure. While taking Feydu along to drive him home, he still from time to time let out a strange laugh. Feydu pitied him a little, thinking that Captain Law's life really was wretched, so lacking in interest that he had to gather up those low-grade delights to entertain himself with. Of the two of them, one had originally arranged to meet Dr. Bai, and the other had arranged to meet Director Lu. After this, they both had to break their appointments. Turn left at that intersection up ahead. You've passed it. Feydu looked up irritably. My good uncle, do you know how to read a GPS? Haven't you worked out yet that I'm planning to abduct and sell you? I've already contacted the buyer. Lowendraw continued directly along the wrong route, driving all the way to the shopping centre. He parked the car and beckoned to Feydu. Come on, get out. The buyer's waiting up ahead to inspect the goods. I shall say this again. I love him. Oh my word. Oh my goodness. Could I trouble you to wait until my packaging is in better condition before selling me? Feydu looked irritable at his wrinkled shirt. He tried to move and felt that his whole body was covered in bruises. Everywhere hurt, so he sat in the car and didn't move, feebly saying to Lowendraw, "You'd better bring the buyer over, I can't walk." Banter is glorious. I can't deal. But also, I feel all the sympathy for Feydu, like, car wrecks are not fun. Lowendraw didn't insist. He only looked at his paralysis and laughed, then walked away on his own, abandoning this man who wasn't as resilient as a pair of glasses in the car. Oh my word. Feydu thought that he was planning to take care of something on the way. He was hitching a ride and had no reason to request to be attended all the way home. Therefore, he didn't pay it any mind. He pushed the passenger seat further back, occupying half of the territory inside the car. Nearly lying down, he leaned back with his eyes half closed. Amidst the continuous pain, he recalled the car crash he'd just met with. Read the road sign wrong. Mistook the gas for the brakes. There was nothing new about this. Whether it had been done on purpose or whether the responsible driver had gotten flustered and slipped up, no one could clearly say. Yeah, but there's a lot of like coincidences almost, at least in my opinion. The only difference was that the former was a murder attempt and the latter was only an accident. Looked at like this, the car really was an ideal means of murder. Thinking these things over, Fedu had nearly thought himself to sleep when the car door next to him clicked open and Lo and Joe returned. Fedu carelessly turned his head and looked at him, then discovered in shock that he was actually holding a cake in his hands, with candles and a stupid cartoon character drawn all over its paper box. Fedu subconsciously dodged it in the direction of the opposite car door, as if what Lo and Joe was holding wasn't a cake but a bomb. Haven't you ever seen a birthday cake? What are you dodging for? The cake isn't planning to violate you. Joe, you don't just say that. Oh my word. Um, Lo and Joe put the cake box away. Didn't the guys dealing with the accident take down your information? Don't tell me the date on your ID is wrong. Fedu was stiffer than the cast on his arm. He had really entered into an unstable stage, ready to jump out of the car and run. But in the end, he didn't. While Lo and Joe's car stereo played a forced mix of ballads and folk songs, Fedu sat there in this state until Lo and Joe had stopped the car downstairs at his own house. The doctor said no smoking, no drinking, and no sex for you. Look at that cast on your arm. You won't be good out to parade yourself around today, so come experience the taste of elderly life with a middle-aged, too elderly person. I'm living for all of this. Lorenzo lifted his chin at him. Get out. Guys, it's happening. I'm so excited for this. Fedu looked at him with an unreadable expression for a while, then, carefully holding his dully aching arm, awkwardly crawled out of the car. He walked too slowly. Lorenzo kept having to stop and wait for him. That bad, young master? Luckily I live on the first floor, or else I'd have to carry you up on my back. Or princess style, I mean, I'm just saying. That's an option. Fedu didn't make a sound and didn't retort. He was like a cat brought to someone else's domain for the first time. Each bone in his spinal column was full of vigilance. Like this, he reached Lowenjo's door a step. Uh, okay, I'm assuming that's a typo. Doorstep and a door, a step and a shuffle at a time. Okay, that makes sense. Sorry. As soon as Lowenjo opened the door, the master of the house struck out a long prepared round little head and looked outside. Lowenjo said, "Get in. Loyigo, don't block the way." Loyigo's field of vision was blocked by the big paper box in his hands. It suspected that this was a new toy its litter box attendant had bought for it as tribute. Loyigo's thought processes. It just adds so much personality to everything. It rudely stretched out its neck and flung out its paws. When Lowen Jaw deftly wrapped it over the paws, Igor irately fell back to the ground and yelled twice. Then it finally saw that there was a stranger behind Lowen Jaw. Fedu and Loigo exchanged a look. Fedu was rather reserved, only taking half a step back. Loigo, however, bristled on the spot and let out an uncat-like shriek. Simultaneously using all four paws, it executed a full turn in place, its claws and the slippery floor rubbing against each other. It opened its large marble-like eyes wide, and lowered its center of gravity, adopting a stance like it was ready to uh, launch a desperate attack anytime. In this delirious posture, it exchanged another look with Feidu. After a moment, Law Yugor came to a rapid decision. It abandoned the fight and charged into the crack under the couch without a look back. It didn't come out. Law and Joe. Dot dot dot. Having raised such a cowardly cat, he felt he'd rather lost face. No need to change your shoes, Lo and Joe pointed to the couch. Sit where you like. Hey, this cat's never had a problem being shy of strangers before. Last time a collie came over, it followed around after whining the whole time. Why is it only afraid of you? Where you go? You get the hell out here. You're going to roll around under the couch getting covered in dust, then rub yourself all over my sheets. Asshole. Will you go play dead? Not budging. Lo and Joe howled towards the couch. Are you going to eat or not? Oh my word. The meeting of the cats of the family. Oh. Well, technically a reunion, but you know, adorable. I think the problem is one is a cat and the other is a tiger, and I can't decide which is which yet. I'm leaning towards Feidu just because of Lo Yigor's reaction to Feidu. This time, at his words, two raised whiskers cautiously stuck out from under the couch. Then it sniffed the stranger's scent and once again decisively retreated. Comrade Lo Yigor had been scared into a hungry strike. Oh my word, a hunger strike. Really? You, the poor cat. Feidu is not domesticated yet. Oh my word. Oh, I kind of want to see the moment where they get together. I mean, I know we're gonna see it eventually, but it's like it feels so far away. Cause I want to see what they're like when they're together. I can't imagine it being much different from now in terms of the banter, but at the same time there would then be this undercurrent of like appreciation for the other person that would just get me. um I'm assuming I'm projecting here. So let's just continue. Lowen Joe was helpless. He opened a can of cat food and put it next to the cat's food bowl, then opened a cupboard and rooted around, pulling out a box of candy and dropping it off in front of Feidu, who was sitting perfectly upright. See if the stuff in there is expired. I'll go throw some together some dishes. I'm telling you now, I'm not attending to a young master. He'll eat whatever I make, none of your fuss. I love how they're literally like Priest is literally equating Lo Yigor and Feidu because he just fed his cat and now he's feeding his future husband. I cannot. Work in progress. It's gonna be great, but yeah, the banter is a permanent feature. That's good. I don't want it to be banterless. That just takes away the magic. And also, I feel like a relationship should just be an extension of the previous form of the relationship. Like a romantic relationship should just be an extension of the previous relationship. Um, Feidu for once didn't raise any objections. His posture was unbearably stiff, as if he wasn't sitting on a couch but on the roof of the world. Interesting. A while after Lorenzo had walked away, he at last strenuously used one hand to open the candy box in front of him. Inside were all sorts of oddities, Likely it was an assortment bought around New Year. The chocolates had already taken on very postmodern appearances that spoiled the appetite on sight. The very bottom layer, however, contained toffees, old fashioned, with a roughly manufactured packaging and irregular shaped candies that glued your teeth together. Remembered how those things tasted. Fedu slowly picked out a toffee, used the tips of his teeth to rip open the package, and tossed the candy in his mouth. Then he orientated his gaze towards the kitchen, where the range hood was roaring. The range hood? Okay. A vegetable knife and a chopping board were rhythmically colliding, and Lowenjo's back was appearing and disappearing. What Lowenjo had described as throwing together some dishes had actually been done conscientiously. In a very short time, he prepared several matching meat and vegetable dishes, and he arranged them around the cake in the center. He thought about it, then stuck in a candle and lit it. This is so cute! I can't deal. Lowenjo looked up and met Fedu's eyes. Then he dryly said, "What are you looking at? I'm not going to sing you happy birthday. Are you planning to make a wish? It can be something like, may I not get hit by a car again on my next birthday." Yeah, sure, let's go with that. I feel like that's a good one. "Oh," said Fedu. The two of them exchanged helpless looks with the cartoon character candle on the cake. The atmosphere was very peculiar, as if it were a moment of deep mourning for ages past. Damn. Lowenjo immediately regretted it. Hurry up and blow it out, this is silly. Of all the cakes in all the world, there were few that Fedu hadn't eaten. Only a birthday cake was very strange to him. It seemed that he tasted one when he was very little. There had been many guests in Fedu's home then. His birthday had been basically put on for outsiders to see. He had only gotten one small, symbolic piece of the expensive cake before it had been carried away. The next day, when he'd gone to look for it, it was already gone because the cream was no longer fresh. Oh, in fact, what was the difference between a birthday cake and an ordinary breakfast cake? At most, there were only a few holes left behind by candles, but Fedu had always thought the flavour wasn't the same. Law and Joe's handiwork was very praiseworthy. The only thing missing was wine. Strictly following the doctor's orders, Captain Law only gave him a bag of high calcium breakfast milk. Oh, great. There were some middle-aged and elderly men who were always making speeches in the outside world. Back home, in front of their wives and children, they would unconsciously bring out this unhealthy mannerism. When Joe was little, he despised his dad's habit of delivering a lecture before a meal, but after 20 years of subtle influence, he had been infected himself. Ordinarily, he'd only had Lloyd Gore around, and the disease had been incubating. Today, there was a Feidu added to the dining table, and the disease erupted. Well, the way that Priest describes these things, I just find so much joy in. Like, the fact that it wasn't, where is it now? The disease had been incubating, and then also the fact that it says today there was a Feidu, and not just there was a Feidu. I don't know why, it just makes me enjoy it so much more. Um, Another year gone by. Lowenjo poured the warmed up breakfast milk into a glass and pushed it in front of Fedu, launching into a lengthy speech that came down in a direct line from his old dad. "I'm not only talking about you, but you should do something proper after this. How long can you fool around? The greatest benefit of marital, sorry, where was my brain? My brain was like, you guys should just get married. So marital, clearly, obviously, not material. um, Where the hell was I? The greatest benefit of material life should be to give a person more pursuits, not to let him lie like a salted fish on a mountain of riches. A young person's life can't be too empty. Sooner or later, something is bound to go wrong. Feidu had never experienced this type of Chinese style head of the household culture. Putting a croquette in his mouth, he felt that it sounded very novel. Lo Wen-jo continued to jabber. Basic human nature is like this. First, we pursue food and shelter, financial security, comfort of the senses. Then, inevitably, we seek higher types of satisfaction. For example, a sense of achievement. For example, self realization. Continuing to lose yourself in low level extravagance is in fact only self numbing. As time goes on, the invisible worries involved in it all will cause a person great pain. A Maybach today, a Bugatti tomorrow, you can buy it all, but can it relieve the deep pain of struggling against human nature? It can't. Feidu composedly swallowed the crickets. Although not being able to afford them at all is obviously a type of pain closer to the surface. Oh. He can defend himself clearly. Um, the okay boomer scene has poor Feidu not suffered enough. Clearly not. These lectures. Oh. Dot dot dot. Lowenjo glared at him, but found that the corners of Feidu's mouth held the trace of a smile. He was joking, even though the joke sounded like it was jabbing into the pit of one's heart. Lowenjo said, "You even dare to interrupt when the head of a household is lecturing? If this were my family house, a little devil like you would have to move a bench to the door and sit there to write a self-reflection. You still want to eat?" Hearing this, Feidu thought of something, and his earlier smile gradually cooled. He was silent for a while, then suddenly said, "In my house, no one spoke during meals, unless there were guests. Otherwise, my dad was rarely at the dining table. My mom's emotions were unstable. Often halfway through the meal, she'd burst out for no reason, sometimes looking upset, throwing down the plates and leaving, sometimes suddenly sitting down next to the table and starting to cry. What a wonderful thing to have to think about during your birthday." You're going to be able to even finish this chapter because it's already like 10 past. Well, almost 10 past. Lowenjo froze. Meals at my house were a very nerve-wracking thing. Feidu shrugged, seeming a little helpless. If it was ever calm, it was simply like winning the lottery. Lowenjo thought about it, didn't comfort him, only lightly said, "That sounds pretty miserable. I don't know whether it's more or less comfortable than writing a self-reflection." Feidu raised his brows. "Seriously, imagine it. You're squatting at the door, leaning on a bench, holding a piece of writing paper towards your house's door. When it's warm, everyone only closes the burglar-proof door. From outside, you can see what's happening inside your house. The neighbors all work with your parents. Anyone who passes by looks down at you and asks, what have you done now, boy?" It's truly a humiliation towards a person's honor and dignity. Feidu couldn't resist laughing. Lowenjo was going to say something else. Suddenly, his phone rang. The call came from the landline at the office. Lowenjo froze, a thread of an ominous premonition rising in his heart. "Hello?" Taran's voice was a little breathless. "Captain Law, a call came from Chang Ning's family to the police station in their jurisdiction. They say Chinchin has disappeared." His phone volume was very loud. Peidu heard it too. Wenjo said, "When? Where did she disappear? Don't panic, it's not necessarily the same thing." She went for a drawing lesson at the Children's Palace today. Chang Ning dropped her off at midday. In the evening, the adults arranged it with her, told her to wait half an hour at the Children's Palace and not come out. Her dad could only pick her up after he got out of work. Their class ended around 4:30. Her dad called her. She was still in the drawing classroom then, a little past 5. When he came over, he couldn't find her. Okay, so it's not the 4 chapters that I wanted. But it's progress. I'm gonna try and see if I can't schedule 2 more lives before I go on Friday, but unfortunately I can't make any promises because there's just a lot of work to do before we leave, and I need to make sure that all my videos are up and ready before we go. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, but otherwise we will definitely finish these up before we move on to Urha in the new year. So that'll mean we're coming back around the 8th of January, which will mean that, let me just quickly check, most likely I'll be able to do a live on either the 6th or the 7th, we'll see. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hi, Cookielicious. Sorry, I almost said it wrong. So yeah, these have been long and hard chapters. Thanks for reading for us. It's a pleasure. Thank you guys for joining me. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I'll either see you sometime this week or I'll see you guys again in the new year, in which case I hope you have a good Christmas. I'm sorry, guys, we're just finishing up. But yeah, hope you otherwise have a good Christmas and a good new year, but hopefully I'll see you guys sometime this week. Zetian. Thanks, guys.